Oh, shoot. Hold on.
Yay! Now we have 2 people.
Okay.
Awesome.
And are we live on Facebook and everything else? We're
We're
live
live
all the way around the board. Okay.
Okay.
Hi,
Are you
everyone.
getting any
For those
feedback?
I can hear you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Judy Morgan of Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets. And my guest today is Stacy, who is, what's your Instagram handle? It's Darling Clementine?
Yeah, it's _ Darlin _ Clementine.
And is Clementine, is that one of your dogs?
Yes, she's one of my 3 English Bulldogs. She's the one
English
that kind of
Bulldogs.
started me on this whole journey. So
Very, very cool.
Very cool.
And how long have you had Bulldogs?
for about 10 years. My first Bulldog was about 10 years ago. And then I got Clementine, and then I started getting really involved in rescue. And so it just keeps growing.
And what kind of dogs did you have before Bulldogs?
I had a pug and a puggle. And long time ago, I had miniature dachshunds.
Oh, okay. So we went from a long nose to short.
Yes.
And now you're in the really short category. So have you always only had English Bulldogs, or have you had other Bulldogs as well?
Just English Bulldogs.
Just English.
Yeah.
And what drew you to the breed?
They are just, I don't know. I have some very deep connection with them. And to me, they're just unlike any other dog I've ever had. And Clementine definitely blew that door wide open for me. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously the first thing that drew me to them was like their cute little squishy faces. And, then I started to really dig into owning Bulldogs, and I just fell in love with them.
Awesome. I mean, they do have pretty cool personalities, and I have had some Bulldog patients, especially the English Bulldogs. I really like their personalities. They're pretty fun and bouncy and sort of like lighthearted. Is like, I don't really know how to describe them, but they're like the whole butt wiggles.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I have one that's
when they're happy, the whole butt wiggles. And interestingly, I am not a Bulldog person. Like, that is not a breed that I have ever considered owning. But oh gosh, probably 10 years ago, I hired a new office manager, and she was a really big Bulldog person, really big in Bulldog rescue. And because we did a lot of work for different rescues, and I've always done a lot of work for Cavalier rescues because that's the breed that lives in my house. So we got some short face issues too with the English boys and the Cavaliers. But because she was so involved in the Bulldog rescue, and we did so much work for different nonprofits and rescue groups, all of a sudden I had a slew of Bulldogs coming in the front door at the clinic. And in that couple of years that she worked for me, I learned more about Bulldogs than probably I ever thought there was to learn, particularly with the rescue dogs that would come in, because they would come in such horrible shape. Just absolutely atrocious. And for me, when I would look at these, and we were an integrated practice, but more bent toward holistic, and I would see these dogs come in, and I'm like, well, we have a simple solution, and this really stinks that these people, these owners, got so frustrated that they couldn't deal with this anymore, and they gave up their beloved pet to rescue because they couldn't afford the veterinary bills. They couldn't stand the smell of the chronic infections. They couldn't stand the dog itching, licking, chewing, scratching, biting, bleeding. It was sad to me.
It's awful
that
it's
so
awful.
many of these dogs were
this
having
is why I do.
issues.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I do what I do, because my goal is to.
Oh, Gwen says you need to mute your computer. And can you turn my volume up?
It is muted. Let me see.
She says it is muted. I don't know.
Okay. Are we still echoing?
Is that better?
No, can't hear her at all.
Yes, no?
I can't hear her at all. No, she just has to mute her computer.
Well, I can hear her, But I'm hearing her through Instagram. Have you lost her sound on the computer?
Yes.
We've lost your sound on the computer, so whatever
How
we
about
just did,
now?
undo it.
How about now?
Can you hear her now?
But there's still an echo.
We can hear you, but we have an echo.
Oh, my computer is muted.
Computer speaker muted, not Zoom.
I can't. What?
Does she have her computer speaker muted?
Is your
Yeah, the speaker's off. It's
the speaker is
X'd out.
off.
Mhm.
How about phone?
Or phone, yeah, whatever.
Phone muted?
I need to mute the phone.
She should be able to mute Dr. Judy.
How do I do that?
So it's not
Oh, here we go.
headphones in, so
Okay, how about
it should
that?
just be only going in through her headphones.
Is that better?
Oh, no. When you did that, now I can't hear you.
Okay. All right. So I did all those things.
Yeah, I don't know where the echo's coming from.
Oh.
I don't hear it. It's not on Instagram, so it's got to be on the computer.
When she did that, it fixed the echo.
When she did, yeah, but then I can't hear her.
So we might have to just be on. It sounds better now. Sounds better now, I think.
I don't know. I hate technology.
I do. I'm not tech savvy at all. And yeah, I mean, my toggle mute it's off.
Okay, her toggle mute is off. Is that better?
Does sound
Play
better.
through this.
What?
Play through my.
It sounds a lot better now, so I think, can you guys keep talking and
Okay. Gwen says, I think she's listening on her phone.
I am.
All right. She says it sounds better. I don't know.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna give it a try. So, so how did you were you always? Because I know now you've kind of taken the more holistic path with your dogs. Were you always kind of
Nope.
shifted that way? No. Okay. So
Nope.
how did you get started with that?
So I would say when Clementine was a year old, she's almost 8 now. I met a fellow Bulldog mom on Instagram. Her name is Sahara. And she is the one that really kind of opened the door for me. For the first year of Clementine's life, I fed her kibble. I did what the, traditional vets told me to do. And the first thing she said that I needed to do is get her off of the kibble. So, yeah. So, and I mean, I at the time was like, what do you mean? Dogs are supposed to eat kibble. So she kind of started me on that journey. And, through that, it just kind of just snowballed from there. And here we are.
This was
today.
a traditional vet who told you this?
No. A good friend of mine that I met through
okay. Got
Instagram.
it.
She was the one that, was into all of this. And she said, you got to get your dogs off of the kibble. So that's where I started first. And then, we had some other issues with Clementine that kind of led more into the whole holistic approach for sure. She kind of became the poster child on Instagram for the idiopathic head tremors. So that kind of opened up a whole nother door of, with like flea and tick meds and, chemicals, getting all of that out. So it's been a slow progression.
Does she still have the tremors, or did you figure out what was behind that?
No, knock on wood, she hasn't had one in a couple of years.
Oh, good.
I do believe it was definitely chemicals that, the liver was holding on to. So hopefully we have that eradicated.
And, it's really interesting because I think that everyone who starts down the holistic path does it because they have a pet with issues. And you get so frustrated going in and getting no answers. The pet's not improving. All these dogs that are released into rescue because the owners couldn't get any answers, couldn't get anywhere, got tired of spending the money, being on that treadmill of,
Yes. It's a vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle, and it's an expensive cycle, and it's a heartbreaking cycle to watch your pet suffer and feeling helpless and unable to do anything. And it's interesting, before I had the office manager with the Bulldogs, my daughter Gwen was taking riding lessons at a really high level stable. And I was sitting in the heated lounge while she was out riding, and one of the instructors came in, and she had English bulldogs. And she gave me the usual line. My dogs are licking their feet, they're itchy, they're gassy, they clear the room. What can I do about this? And I asked what she was feeding, and she was feeding what is considered a higher end kibble. And this goes back 15 years ago at least. And I said, you can't feed a bulldog kibble. I knew this 15 years ago. You cannot feed a bulldog kibble. They just, you're going to be on that vicious cycle.
Everything
forever.
starts with food with these guys. Everything.
Absolutely.
Everything.
And I'll tell you that woman, I see her on Facebook all the time now with her house, which is a beautiful log cabin house with all these bulldogs laying all over the place. And they are just the picture of health. And within a month, we had her dogs at the picture of health with just changing diet. We didn't do anything else other than I said, here's a list of the raw foods I recommend at that time. Here, go pick one.
Yes.
And it made all the difference in the world. So how effective do you think you are with your, first of all, I assume your platform is fairly large at this point because bulldogs are really popular.
Yes. I mean, we have like 92,000 followers right now.
Amazing. And do you think you're making an impact in the bulldog world as far as holistic health, feeding, that sort of thing?
I do. I am so super passionate about it. And when I tell you that I spend at least probably 4 hours of every single day going through all of my messages and trying to help fellow bulldog owners. Obviously, I can only give advice to a certain point, but I come from a standpoint of what I've personally been through, what other people that I know of have been through. I also encourage people to do their own research on things. But yes, I try to use my platform to reach bulldog parents that were like me 7 years ago that had no idea, that our bulldog shouldn't eat kibble. So I've been there. I can relate. I've done the work. I rescue, and I've had bulldogs that I've adopted that when they came to me, had completely missing fur on both sides, had it growing back within 6 weeks. I mean, I've done the work. So yes, my followers are amazing. And I just, like I said, every day I'm constantly going through my messages, and it's always the same pattern.
Oh yeah.
But the great thing is that when I do recommend, the raw, and I get it, like not everybody can do raw. Some of them can't. So I try to do my best to recommend better choices. But the people that switch over to raw, when I get a message from them in like 4 weeks and they're like, oh my gosh, my dog isn't shedding like crazy anymore. And my dog has more energy and the hair is growing back. And, all of these things, the ears are getting better, eyes are clearing up, that is what makes it all worth it for me. Because in my mind, I'm maybe potentially saving that dog from ending up in our rescue or a
Exactly.
rescue.
Exactly. Exactly. Because unfortunately, I think that bulldogs, something in their genetics, I mean, we know that dogs have no need for starches, carbohydrates, potatoes, peas, legumes. They have zero requirement. That's why there's no requirement listed in AFCO. It doesn't need to be in any food for our dogs. But I think that the bulldog breeds, above a lot of other breeds, just don't tolerate it. It just
wreaks havoc on them.
It turns into yeast.
Yes.
It's a yeasty. Yeah, and part of it is we spend so much time talking about the microbiome, and part of it is the grains and the starches are changing the pH in the stomach. They're changing the pH in the digestive tract. They're changing the microbiome, the good bacteria, virus, fungi in the gut. And it's just not what they are designed to ingest.
No. But unfortunately, most of these people that come to me for help, their bulldogs are eating a food that contains chicken and or grain in it. And that combination, and I want to scream this from the rooftops to everybody, don't feed your bulldogs chicken and grains, because it is extremely inflammatory. It's a warming meat. These guys really do better with neutral cooling proteins. But the grains, it does a number on them. So that is definitely something that I want to stress to people. And, 90% of the Bulldogs that come into the rescue that I'm involved with, which is Bullies to the Rescue, 90% of those Bulldogs that come in are there because of food related problems.
Yeah. And it's just amazing when you bring them in and when you have a holistic rescue that is willing to say, yes, we will tackle this from this direction. And when they get the importance of the diet as the foundation for these, particularly for these breeds, it's mind-boggling because it's so simple. And and it just boggles my mind, like all these dogs that have been going to veterinary dermatologists and specialists and internal medicine specialists for their IBD. Oh gosh, I had one of the sweetest, most wonderful bulldogs that came to me with IBD. She was a rack of bones. Her coat was horrible. And so I just designed a diet for her that was species appropriate, and the owner was great. She's like, I will do whatever it takes. And so we designed a homemade diet for this dog. And literally within a couple of weeks, this dog was turning around. She was putting on weight. Her coat brightened up. She was gorgeous. We went a couple of years with gorgeous and then discovered that she had the genetic problem where she makes urates. So then we had to go to a different diet, but she's still very well managed, but her diet is not what I would consider my ideal. But bulldogs have special genetic problems that then sometimes we have to work around those as well. And that's when the raw diets may not work out so well for them. So common.
Was coming from the shelter, we had nothing. I immediately put him on a raw diet, and within 4 days, his stools were completely normal.
Yeah,
After 5 months of diet.
5 months. It happens so often, and unfortunately, because traditional veterinarians are so against raw feeding, most of them.
Most, yeah.
And it's because AHA and AVMA have big statements on their website. CDC has a big statement on their website. That FDA, like all the letters, have big statements on their websites. Don't feed raw food because you'll kill your dogs and your family. Well, most of us, unless you're a vegetarian or a vegan, you're handling raw meat in your kitchen almost every day anyway. And I mean, we're not stupid. We know how to clean up after handling raw meat. And frankly, the pet food industry, the raw pet food industry, is held to such a high standard that they are allowed to have 0 bacteria in that raw food. If they're a reputable company, they're going to have 0 bacteria in that raw food because that's the standard that they're held to, which is much higher than the USDA standards for raw meat in the grocery store that we're feeding ourselves. So, I think the scare tactics that are used, unfortunately, turn people against going to what is better for their pets. And then we end up with this chronic cycle of, oh, I'll switch from this dry kibble to this dry kibble. Oh, I'll use this high fiber dry kibble. I'll use this metabolic dry kibble. I'll use the GI low fat dry kibble. And it just never goes anywhere. Maybe we get the stool a little bit better short term, but the coat doesn't get better. The allergies don't get better. The skin pocket infections, like none of it gets better because we haven't really solved the problem. And this is something that I really want to caution people against, because it's what I call a lateral move. It's like, okay, I'm feeding XYZ brand of dry kibble, and I want to move over to this brand because I heard it was better. And this one was a chicken and rice, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go to like a lamb and rice food. Well, one, we still have rice in there, so that's a similar ingredient. If they had a rice allergy on this side, they're still going to have it over here. But the other thing that happens is the lamb and rice kibble might be labeled as lamb and rice, but when you read the ingredients, there's chicken in there too. So you have to be really careful about really reading the full label. But I just want to say that when we're feeding kibble,
99% of them also have synthetic vitamin mineral mixes added in, and those synthetics are a foreign body to the dog. And so the dog's immune system, particularly if they have leaky gut, is going to say, wow, what are all these foreign invaders bombarding my system? And they just,
and let's face it, I think most bulldogs do have leaky gut. So,
and that's part of the problem. A lot of them, like the one that you took in, we switched them over to the raw food, and it's like a miracle, and all the the bright lights come on, and we all cheer. Some of them aren't that quick. Some of them
definitely can take time.
You can go through a transition period that can be really ugly, and people get scared off. And I tell people,
and I tell people that it is common for some dogs when you do start the raw, they could go through a detox period. So it can take several months for changes to occur when you change a diet. Some, like you said, you'll see things immediately within like a week, and some it can take up to 3 months. But you really have to stay the course when you decide to switch to raw, because it can take a little time.
It can,
especially if they're really having a lot of problems.
And one of the problems
is that a lot of times when these dogs come in, one, they're on a bad diet, but they're also on monthly cytopoint injections. They're
Apoquel,
on daily
steroids.
And Apoquel's handed out like candy, and I think it's probably more bulldogs than
yes,
a lot of other breeds.
That is one thing that I definitely wanted to talk about, because I personally know people that their bulldogs have died from lymphoma from taking Apoquel, and I'm talking within 7 months of starting Apoquel. The amount of messages that I get on a regular basis that said my dog just died from this cancer or that cancer. And I said, well, were they on Apoquel? And they said, yes. Having this platform, I have more exposure to people than maybe one doctor in a practice that has bulldogs. So just the amount of people that have come to me that have gone through that, I am very much against Apoquel. It was not ever made to be given long-term. It's way too overprescribed, and they keep them on the Apoquel. And in addition to that, the steroids. And then the problem with that is that in a week they look much better, everything's calmed down. And then when they go to take them off of those medications, they have a major flare-up, which is going to happen to anybody who gets their animal off of steroids or Apoquel, and then they go back on it again. So these dogs get into this vicious cycle that they can't get out of. And I've also had bulldogs who've gotten calcinosis from overuse of steroids. So, and it boggles my mind that veterinarian did not tell them that, oh, well, this is calcinosis. Like, I could look at it and tell them that it was calcinosis. So,
well, it boggles the mind that they're giving so many steroids that we've got a dog who is basically Cushingoid and advanced Cushing. When you're getting calcinosis, that's advanced Cushing's.
Absolutely.
So, but the problem for traditional veterinarians, I'm going to give them a little bit of an out here. They don't have any other tools in their toolbox.
Right.
They've got steroids, they've got Apoquel, they've got cyclosporin, which is atopica, and they have cytopoint.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I see that the dogs get started on this vicious cycle, and initially they improve. Like you said,
right.
It's like, oh, he looks so much better. And then you take him off the drugs, and then we get a rebound. So it actually comes back worse because we didn't solve anything. We were treating symptoms.
Absolutely.
We didn't get to the underlying problem. And so then we get a rebound. So then their doses get higher and higher and higher. And 3 years in, you're like, okay, nothing is working. The dog is still on Apoquel. The dog's still on cytopoint. The dog is on steroids along with his Apoquel. Nothing is working.
Right. And now you're treating other symptoms from those medications. So you're getting more medications for the symptoms that you're getting from the first medications. So, and it becomes very hard for the pet owner, because when you go back to the dermatologist or back to the internal medicine specialist or back to whoever you're going to, they're saying, well, this is all we've got. And okay, here,
we'll do a hydrolyzed protein diet. Well, that's no better.
Mm-mm.
They only work 50% of the time, and they're not meant for long-term use. All of these things we're talking about are meant for short-term use.
Yes.
Prescription diets are meant to be prescribed to use for about 30 days, maybe 60, while you are treating the underlying problem.
Mhm.
And the problem is that the underlying problem never gets treated.
Correct.
Everybody focuses on symptoms,
Yep.
and nobody goes in to fix the gut health or to change the diet. And
Mhm.
I shouldn't say nobody. Too many
Yeah.
don't do that. And I can't fault the pet owners for this, because the pet owners
Absolutely.
don't know. And then when they're scared,
Mhm.
like you get this diagnosis, like, oh, now your dog's in kidney failure. Oh,
Right.
and now you need this prescription kidney diet, and you're scared. You don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I can't fault the pet owners.
Absolutely.
Because many of them don't have access to a holistic veterinarian or to a veterinarian who is going to give them an alternative.
Yeah, I mean,
unfortunately.
I have to say, you know, I have several holistic vets, but I also have like a traditional vet whom I love, and she completely supports, you know, everything that I do with my bulldogs, even if we don't necessarily agree on everything. She has never made me feel bad about my choices. She'll do whatever she can, you know, to support those choices. And, you know, those veterinarians do exist. They're not all just, you know, anti-raw, but I always, you know, try to encourage people that, you know, if you're hitting that wall when you go into your vet's office, whether like, you know, oh, the natural flea and tick doesn't work and you don't feed raw and they have to have grains, because believe me, I mean, that's what people get nailed with a lot of times when they go in. If that's what's happening and, you know, you're not happy with it, then, you know, I always recommend that they look for, you know, another veterinarian who hopefully will support their choices.
Yeah, a lot of people do not have access to a holistic veterinarian,
Mhm.
but what you do need is a veterinarian who's willing to have an open dialogue.
Absolutely.
Someone who doesn't get defensive, someone who doesn't berate you, belittle you.
Mhm.
I have people call me and email me and message me and say, I just walked out of my veterinarian's office crying because they yelled at me
Mhm.
because I don't want to give all the vaccines and I'm refusing to feed the kibble. And
Yeah.
you mentioned the whole grain thing, and we did a live on this
Yes.
on Tuesday, but the FDA finally did come out and say there is no connection that has been found between grain-free diets and dilated cardiomyopathy. You do not need to add grains if you are feeding a healthy, species appropriate raw diet. Please do not ruin it by throwing
Right.
rice in the bowl.
Right.
You do not need it.
Right.
Because that's what's happening. Even some
Yeah.
of the veterinarians who have been tolerating clients feeding raw food, now they're like, oh, there's no grains in there. You have to
Yeah.
add grains. No, you do not.
Yeah.
Please do not.
Yes. And
I'm
that's
just gonna
something
set
that
that
people
record
are very
straight.
afraid of. People, you know, come to me and they say, well, you know, my vet doesn't want me to do the raw and they told me they have to have grains. And, you know, again, like I tell them, well, I can't tell you what to do. I can only arm you with, you know, the information. But yes, that is definitely something that has, you know, gone through the Bulldog community. And, you know, the founder of the rescue that I'm involved with, I mean, she's been saying this for years, like, you don't have to feed the dogs grains. Like, that's what's putting them in my rescue, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's not good.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate. And one of the problems that I see with bulldogs, they are cute. They're
Mhm.
adorable, especially the Frenchies. They have become so dang popular.
Yeah.
But people don't do their research
Mhm.
before they go get one of these dogs. And so I think a lot of the dogs that end up in rescue are people that don't realize that they might be a teeny bit high maintenance. You know, they might need a few things different from other breeds.
Mhm.
And I mean, they really just seem to be super sensitive to
Well, the Frenchies,
what
I mean,
is
we get them
going in their
in
bowl.
for IVDD. So,
Yeah.
you know, and most people have no idea what that is, and that requires immediate surgery or you're going to have a paralyzed dog. So, yeah, I mean, that's a huge problem with, you know, in our rescue when we get Frenchies, that's usually the main reason is for,
Yeah.
you know, the IVDD.
So. Yeah, people not understanding a dog with brachycephalic airway,
Mhm.
not understanding, you know, being careful with those dogs in hot, humid weather.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's
So
certain
much.
things about the breed that you just kind of need to be aware of
Mhm.
if this is going to be your breed of choice. And they are adorable. I
Mhm.
get it. But if you're going to be, and most of the people that are watching are probably Bulldog people, but you know, if you have friends who are like, oh my God, your dog is so cute, I want to get one just like it, please educate them.
I tell them, no, you don't. I mean, you know, it's, and I do, I actually try to discourage people, you know, more often than not, because they don't understand. They just see the cute puppies. And I mean, I'm biased, but a Bulldog puppy, there's nothing cuter. But you know, about a year in, after they've been eating an inappropriate diet, and we've pumped them full of, you know, over vaccinating them and over medicating them, a year in, it's like, oh, you got problems coming out. And then, like we were talking about, that's when they start getting trapped in that vicious cycle. And then the people can't handle it. Right. And it's so preventable. And so that's really what I try to use my platform for is, you know, I've done so many videos on just how to clean their faces. And it still like blows my mind sometimes, where people are like, oh, wow, I didn't know like you had to do that. And I'm like, yes, you know,
yes,
so
the facial folds, the tail pockets.
Yes.
And I knew nothing about that until I started working with all these Bulldogs that were coming in through this rescue. And I was like, oh, these folds are disgusting.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, I think the few that I was seeing in my practice were Bulldog owners who knew what they were doing with their Bulldogs. And so they were taking good care of them.
Yeah.
When you see a Bulldog that has had zero care of any of the folds in their bodies, it's bad. Really ugly.
Yeah, it's bad. And it takes a long time to crawl out of that.
Yeah, they get so raw. And I mean, it's just, it's sad for the dogs because it's painful. And I think once it reaches that point where you've got this huge infected raw mess in these folds, and then the owner finally figures it out because they're smelling so bad. When you go to treat it, it's so painful that the dog wants to eat you. And then you're like, oh, you can't do that. Yeah. So there's a lot of education. I really wish that every time somebody got a Bulldog, it came with either an instruction booklet or a person that sold them the dog, gave them the dog, however they got the dog, that said, okay, here's the list of things you have to do for a Bulldog because they are different.
Yeah, they really are. And, you know, chronic ear infections, that's food. Like that is from food. And people are like, well, no, I mean, the vet said that it was allergies. And I'm like, allergies that word's thrown around way too much. And I'm not saying that there aren't dogs that are sensitive to certain things that bloom, because I mean, Clementine gets like goopy eyes for like 2 weeks in the spring because of something, but allergies are just blamed way too often. And it's not allergies. It's the food that you're putting inside of the dog, and it's the over vaccination.
Yeah. And the immune system.
Correct. Yeah. And these guys come out of the gate literally with a weak immune system. And so every time we put something into their bodies, it just keeps breaking it down. And then, you know, they're susceptible to so much. And it's sad. It's really sad.
There was a great study that came out a couple of years ago where they looked at dogs with atopic dermatitis. So basically allergies to environmental stuff. And so they looked at what the mother was fed, whether it was raw or kibble, what the father was fed, whether it was raw or kibble, and if they had allergies. And then they looked at puppies that were immediately weaned onto raw food versus puppies that were weaned onto kibble. And it was really interesting. Even if the parents had allergies, if the parents had been raw fed and the puppies were immediately put on raw food, the puppies stood a really good chance of not ever showing allergic conditions. Whereas even if you had raw fed parents, the puppies put on kibble, all kinds of problems, kinds of problems. If the parents were kibble fed and the puppy was raw fed, the puppy did a little better. If the parents were kibble fed and the puppies were kibble fed, it was a tragic nightmare. You're going to be on Apoquel and Cytopoint for the rest of your life. Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah, it is. It's really sad. And I just every day, I mean, it really hurts me every day when I hear these sad, you know, stories from people reaching out because they're just desperate, and they come to me because they've already spent thousands and thousands of dollars at their vet and thousands of dollars at the dermatologist. And somebody, you know, on Facebook told them, hey, reach out to, you know, Stacy. And, you know, I just give them some basic, you know, advice and recommend some changes, and they come back and they'll say, you just did more in 4 weeks than,
than the thousands I've spent in the last 4 years.
Yeah. And so, it's rewarding, but I really am just trying to avoid more of suffering for these guys. Unnecessary suffering,
Well, and it is a sin because bulldogs are not, like, if you go to a breeder to buy a bulldog, or God forbid, go to a pet store to buy a bulldog, you're going to spend thousands of dollars to get a bulldog, particularly a Frenchie. They're not easy dogs to make more of. So they're expensive. And so a lot of people put a lot of money out to get these dogs, which sometimes means that now they're out of money for the veterinary disasters that are going to occur, or they had enough money to buy this dog and they're willing to invest a lot of money. So they get stuck at the dermatologist spending thousands of dollars and spinning their wheels.
Right.
So we also want to talk about avoiding chemicals with these guys, particularly some of the newer oral flea and tick chemicals, which I'm not going to say that that's just a bulldog thing. I'm going to say that's every dog
Absolutely.
thing. We are killing tens of thousands of dogs with these oral chemicals. They last 1 month or 3 months. They are deadly.
Absolutely.
And need to be avoided. So talking about, idiopathic head tremors, seizures, tremors, ataxia, vomiting, diarrhea, internal hemorrhage, dry eye. I mean, take your pick.
Yeah.
These are horrible drugs and chemicals. And a lot of times, if you have a dog who has a neurologic reaction to one of those oral flea and tick chemicals, you could only give 1 dose and stop it and never give it again, but your dog may be fraught with a lifetime.
Absolutely, because that liver just holds right onto those chemicals. And the term idiopathic seizure disorder or whatever, I mean, that's another one that really bothers me, because there is a known reason for that. And if you're loading your dog up with these meds, chances are that's a contributor. I mean, if this just started happening, when they're 4 years old, I mean, there's a reason for that. Now, granted, yes, there are other medical conditions, and I understand that, but these chemicals, I mean, they're doing bad things to our animals, and there are other alternatives out there. The one thing that I kind of get a little bit stumped on is, the heart guard, because I would certainly never tell anyone not to give their dog heart guard. I personally don't. Because again, that has caused head tremors in one of my rescues. I mean, almost immediately. And, I always tell people, if you're in a high heartworm area, you definitely need to consider it. But it's kind of just like risk, outweighing the benefit.
It's a risk reward.
Yeah.
So I have a bunch of different articles about heartworm disease and heartworm prevention and what are my favorites and least favorites of things to use. So I just want to warn everyone, do not ever agree to the injectable heartworm preventative, the ProHeart 6 or the ProHeart 12. That stuff is deadly. It's been taken off the market and brought back with no changes. And then they increase the dose by 3 times to make it a 12-month shot, which is even more deadly. Avoid that one at all costs. Avoid anything oral or topical for heartworm. And I think the 2 main products that are used are Interceptor and HeartGuard. I prefer Interceptor. The problem is the drug companies want to have great label claims. So they keep adding things in. So we get Interceptor Plus, and they just keep adding more layers onto it. So it really is something that depends on where you live and what your dog's exposure potential is. So I lived in New Jersey up until 2 years ago, and now I live in North Carolina. I quit giving my dogs heartworm preventative in New Jersey for the last 4 years we lived there, and I have never given them heartworm preventative here in North Carolina. Now, North Carolina is in the South. Yeah. It's warm most of the year. A lot of people would say, oh my gosh, you absolutely have to give heartworm preventative. We had a stray dog show up in our yard, thought about keeping him for a hot second, took him to the vet. He was heartworm positive, had every other parasite under the sun. And I said, okay, that's okay. We'll fix him. He ran away that's how he ended up in our yard. He ran away from somebody else. So we didn't get to fix him. So heartworms are definitely an issue here.
Oh, for sure.
But The healthier, so if you have a dog who's on immune suppressants, if they're on Apoquel, they're on Cytopoint, they're on steroids, their immune system suppressed, a heartworm mosquito bites them, you're going to have heartworms.
Absolutely.
If you have a healthy dog with a healthy immune system and they get bitten by an infected mosquito, their chances of their immune system attacking that little bugger are really good.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends on the health of your pet, and heartworm preventative can be given seasonally.
Mm-hmm.
So if you live in the northern tier of the US, you absolutely can give it seasonally. There are some, you can look up the heartworm maps.
Yes, I've done that.
By the Heartworm Society,
Mm-hmm.
Heartworm Prevention Society, whatever they are.
Yep.
So you look up the maps and you can see what the incidence is in your area. So for instance, a lot of Colorado, the incidence is 0.
Yeah.
So why?
Right.
I did a talk in Nova Scotia a couple of years ago. There was a traditional veterinarian in the audience, and I started talking about this. And I said, oh, wait a minute, do you even have heartworms? Because it's really cold here most of the time. And so I asked him directly, and he said, no, we don't have heartworms here. And I said, well, then you don't, like, I don't even need to talk about HeartGuard or Interceptor or heartworm preventative because you don't use it. And he said, oh, no, we prescribe it every month all year round. And I said, wait, what? You don't even have heartworms?
Yeah.
He said, well, it prevents intestinal parasites. And I just looked at him and said, have you ever heard of running a stool sample?
Exactly. And that's what I tell people too. They're like, well, what do you do for parasites? I'm like, nothing. I do a yearly stool sample for my guys, and that's enough, you know, like
Right.
if there's no parasite there, why would you treat them?
Right.
Like, it makes no sense to me.
Yep. I've brought in rescue dogs to my house that, you know, I test their stool sample when they come in. It's like, oh, geez, you're loaded with every parasite
Mm-hmm.
under the sun. Okay, we got to get rid of that. And my healthy dogs have never contracted anything from any rescue that I've ever brought in. I do a good job cleaning up the yard, and everybody gets on a good diet and they have an immune system that works.
Yeah.
And so that is 3/4 of it. Dr. Will Falconer actually has a book called, I think it's called Healthy Dogs Don't Get Heartworm, and he's in Texas, and he recommends no heartworm preventative.
Wow.
And that's a hard stretch in that area. But the bottom line is healthy dogs don't get parasite infestation. They don't get an overwhelming burden of parasites because their immune system says, oh, that's foreign, I can take care of that.
Right.
So that's why it's so critical that these dogs get off steroids, get off Apoquel, get off Cytopoint, get off Atopica, get a healthy diet, get a healthy gut microbiome,
Right.
and get put back together so that then you don't have all these other issues going on.
Now, for healthy or alternative options for these flea and tick meds, because a lot of people aren't aware. I don't know what you use, but we love Wonderside, and then Kin
Kin and Kind.
Yes.
We use Kin and Kind. We use Project Suds. We use Buck Mountain Parasite Dust. We have an oral product called Bug Off. There's another new one out by Solutions Pet Products, which is a parasite free or something. It's another herbal. There are so many options. Also for your yard, we have beneficial nematodes. Beneficial nematodes are amazing. I've had many clients in Florida who just could not get rid of their flea problems. They put the beneficial nematodes, which are basically little bugs that take care of the flea eggs and larvae, and they put those in their yard. It's like, oh my gosh, my flea problem is finally gone. So
awesome.
One of the problems that I see, particularly with fleas, is that the flea its life cycle, only 5% is actually spent on the pet. And people get really crazy putting chemicals in and on their dog, and they never look at the environment or treat the environment. You have got, because 95% of the life cycle is not on the dog.
Absolutely.
It's everywhere
in their
else.
environment. Yeah.
So you've got to do the yard. You've got to do the house. We have 0 carpet in our house because we have way too many animals, and I don't want bugs living in my carpet.
Yeah.
And that's like an allergy looking to happen when you have carpet. So we have 0 carpet. It just makes life a lot easier.
Absolutely. I agree. Same here.
So there's just, and we have a great blog on drjudymorgan.com on, it's called Flea and Tick Prevention Revisited. That's the most recent one. And it has links to all the different things that we recommend. Diatomaceous earth can be used on the pets or in the house or in the yard. Just be very careful with DE. It is drying to the coat. You don't want to make a big poof of powder. You do not want to inhale it. You do not want them to inhale it. With essential oil sprays, make sure that you're getting something that has been tested for animals, like the Kin and Kind, the Project Sides, the Wonder Side, the Cedar Side. Those are animal specific, tested, used on animals. We know that they are safe. If you're mixing your own essential oil blends, which a lot of people do, it's fine. Just make sure that what you're using is animal safe, animal approved, and that it is diluted in the correct dilutions. The only essential oil that I ever talk about people being able to use undiluted and straight is rose geranium. 1 dot between the shoulder blades, 1 dot on the butt. You can do that one straight. Everything else has to absolutely be diluted appropriately.
Yeah, and it's a little extra work, and I do tell people that, you know, I mean, I get it. Like the dogs don't like to be sprayed, and you don't like to be bothered with spraying it. Trust me, I go through it, but you know, in order to keep your dog, you know, more chemical free, I mean, you do need to kind of take some extra steps. It's a little extra work, but it's worth it. And a lot of those products need to be reapplied very often. So.
And that's part of the problem. We've become a society of convenience.
Yes.
It's like when your veterinarian says, look, I'll just give him this little chewable thing right here, right now. It's going to last for 3 months. You don't have to worry about it at all. Just stop it in 3 months and get another one. People go, wow, that's so simple. I love that. That would. Yeah,
it's true. I mean, they
yeah.
I mean, and one of my vets even said the same thing. It's like, you know, when people come in with a dog with skin issues or allergies, they want a quick fix. They want to be handed something that they're going to, you know, go home and not have to worry about it. And not everybody wants to go the route that you need to go in order to really get to the root of the problem. So yeah, I mean, it's tough, you know. I mean, like I said, you know, I really do like my veterinarian, and you know, she straight up told me, like, it's people want a solution, you know. So
they want to walk out of the office knowing that tomorrow morning the dog is going to feel better, and maybe they're going to get a little more sleep because the dog's not up all night scratching. So you know, besides the oral steroids, I had a practitioner down the road from my clinic. At his clinic, everything that walked in the office, and I do mean everything, it didn't matter what they had going on, they got a long-acting steroid injection that would last 6 to 8 weeks, which is even worse, because if your dog is on an oral pill and they have a bad reaction or they're not doing well, you can stop the pill. When you give a long-acting injection or these flea and tick chemicals that last 1 to 3 months, you can't get it back.
No,
it's in. You are stuck with those side effects. You are stuck with whatever that does. And we end up making dogs diabetic. We put them in kidney failure. We give them pancreatitis. We give them high blood pressure. So many problems with the drugs. So I cannot reiterate enough. And I'm so glad that you are a resource for the Bulldog people, because this breed truly
they need
seems
help.
to have more gut and allergy problems, and people don't know how to handle it. And so I am very happy that there's someone like you out there giving them direction and helping point them in the right direction, and then being willing to kind of be the hand holder as they're going through the process, because sometimes it's, you know, it isn't an overnight fix, and the process can be a little daunting sometimes.
One thing I did want to tell people, when you're dealing with interdigital cyst, and this breed is, half of them have them, so we know that that's from food. But a really good treatment that I learned from a friend many years ago is to mix activated charcoal and Indian healing clay together, equal parts. You add a little bit of warm water and you form a paste. And you're going to apply that all over the paw, all over the cyst. Now, yes, it's messy. It's a pain in the butt. They don't like it. But if you do it every single day, like you let it sit for like, 20 minutes if you can, rinse it off, and you repeat it daily, it is going to either, if it's a big cyst, that cyst is either going to pop and then it's going to start to dry up, or if it's a small cyst, it'll just eventually dry up on its own. If you're consistent with that, it will clear up most interdigital cysts. It's a tried and true. I mean, I've had rescues that that came to me and had the cysts, and I did the treatments, and, within like 2 weeks, the cysts were gone. But again, it's something that, you have to be consistent with. And it's, messy, and people don't want to, usually deal with it, but I do like to throw that out there.
I think that's I've never heard that mix, and I think that's amazing, and I love it because activated charcoal is drawing out toxins.
Oh, yes,
and things.
yes.
And so is the clay, and so that's pretty cool. I just wonder if we could make up this paste, because they make these really cool little boots that you could just slide on and slide the little boot on there, the foot that you're treating. Leave it on there for 20 minutes so the dog can't lick it and it's not so messy. I think that's amazing. Very cool.
Yeah.
You really should package that and market it.
Yeah, trust me, I've thought about it, but
this is where these ideas start, and this is how companies get formed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much, Stacy, for coming on and educating.
Thank you for having me.
I know that not all my followers are Bulldog people, but they have friends that have Bulldogs. And the information that we're talking about doesn't apply only to Bulldogs. This information really is across the board. If you have dogs with IBD, allergies, neurologic problems, I mean, we need to kind of clean up our act with what we're doing with all of these dogs.
Yeah.
So on Instagram, it was _Darlin_Clementine.
Yes.
Do you have a Facebook or website?
No website. We do have a Facebook, but I really don't use it very often. It's just,
So Instagram, she's your person on Instagram. You got to go there.
Awesome.
Sounds good to me. Thanks, Stacy.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you for helping so many Bulldogs. We really, really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you too. Thank you so much for everything that you do.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
All right, I'm gonna figure out